What's going on YouTube? It's Tej back again with another video, and today we're reacting to some of day one plus free agency signings. Let's jump into it. Now before we get started, this is going to be a lot less structured than my normal videos. No graphics made. I do apologize, but there has been so much breaking and so many contracts signed all at once or one right after another. So it created a situation where I didn't know what players people want to talk about, how to structure it, et cetera, et cetera. Plus, it takes a lot of time on top of my work. Hopefully you all can understand. It's going to be a little bit more relaxed setting than my normal videos. But hopefully you will enjoy the video nonetheless. And if you do, hit that like button. It would help me out a ton. If you're new right here, be sure to hit that big red subscribe button. And of course, join me for a conversation down in the comments section. Who's your favorite team? What signings did you like? Which ones did you not like? What players do you wish your favorite squad could have signed? Or what do you think of some of these big time deals being handed out? Love to have your thoughts. Let's talk about some football down in the comments section. We'll go ahead and start with this Aaron Rodgers deal. So essentially a 2-year deal tacked on to the end of his existing contract. We'll see what those cap hits look like because, 124, that's $62 million off the top of my head. I don't know if that's going to be the cap hit. I have obviously a hard time thinking that it will be, so we'll have to see as more details come out from that. But, hey, if you're Green Bay, the priority, and honestly, if you were to say 12 months ago that Green Bay was keeping Aaron Rodgers, a lot of people would have been surprised. So whatever the cost, it makes a lot of sense for the Packers. Next deal we could talk about here is DJ Chark going to the Lions. And I actually really dig this move because I've been running through some of my updated mocks that we'll have on the channel here pretty soon. And, at the top of the second round at pick 34, I think there's a lot of talent that could, fall off of, first round radars. Maybe Sky Moore's there, Jahan Dotson, a Christian Watson, maybe they like a Jalen Tolbert. And all those players, I think, fit in well with Amon-Ra St. Brown. Now you add DJ Chark in the mix. Really interesting, especially if they do end up getting a guy like a Jahan Dotson or a Sky Moore, who isn't necessarily that big body, physical win at the catch point type of dude. He wins it a different way. I think that really creates a nice wide receiver room with guys who can win in different ways at different body types. And I know Jared Goff isn't maybe the guy, but if they take a Des Ridder or Kenny Pickett or Matt Corral at 32, I think there's something to be interested in to see how they perform with those wide receivers around him. So, you know what? Chark, it's only a 1-year deal. The Lions obviously have cap space. They can kind of trial run, get to see if this, this will work long term. I'll give this a B+. Here are some of the details on one of the bigger contracts that the Jags have given out. Brandon Sheriff, 3 years, $52.5 million. Big time guarantees, which, makes sense as a player of his age. That's probably something that he was really, fighting for. The Pro Bowl bonuses, whatever. He's, household name when it comes to being a guard, so he'll probably make it all 3 years of this deal. So, cool, extra $3 million in the pocket of Brandon Sheriff. But this was a big signing because this team has been looking to get better across the interior. AJ Cann has been fine. AJ Norwell fine. Brandon Linder's one of the better centers in the league. So hopefully having Brandon Sheriff right next to him on the right side, that will improve that offensive line. And the offensive line in and of itself is going to be an interesting talking point because there's so much to consider with that number 1 pick. Do you go after Aiden Hutchinson or do you go after an Evan Neal? You tagged Cam Robinson, so keeping Cam Robinson presumably at left tackle. Maybe it's Walter Little sliding over to the right side. I think a lot of people are starting to get excited about thinking about what he could become. And then you add Brandon Sheriff at the right guard spot. That offensive line, maybe in theory sounds at least slightly better. So we'll see what else they do here. But Sheriff, one of the best, free agents, point blank and simple, out on the market. So makes sense for the Jags to be one of the teams interested in. You're trying to keep Trevor Lawrence upright. So this deal makes a ton of sense there. I'll go B as well. And I'm realizing now I said B as well after I said B+ on the first one. Ignore me. But Charvarius Ward going out to San Francisco, and I really am intrigued by this. And, Ward, I think in a lot of ways, I felt like he was going to go to a team that runs a lot of man pride. Like a New England made a lot of sense to me. This is a very different defense that he'll be, jumping into. But he is a player that I've naturally kind of always liked. Younger, saw some upside. We're starting to see the price tag put on there, so maybe the interest behind it. Charvarius Ward has started to subside a little bit because if he's making this type of money, almost $15 million a year, it's like, okay, well now I'm not interested as much compared to him being a young, promising, up and coming, cheaper option at the position. But San Francisco, this was a huge area of need, and you go out there and get a guy who is still improving, is still young, and could potentially be your CB1. So I'll go with a B here as well. So next up, let's talk about Justin Reid going out to Kansas City, and I wanted to include this Kimberly Martin tweet as well. No deal ever offered to Tyrann Mathieu. I've been kind of intrigued with Daxton Hill being a potential Tyrann Mathieu replacement for Kansas City at 30. And, they didn't even want to offer him a deal here. And, part of it is just understanding that Tyrann Mathieu is one of the best players at that position. He's going to fetch a lot of money. They knew they're probably going to have to get cheaper there. And Justin Reid is one of those guys where I've always liked him. He gives you that split safety, ability because he is so athletic and he is so gifted, in coverage that you can just be your deep guy. He could also play in the line of scrimmage. Dude is not afraid to lay the boom. So he gives you a lot of versatility in where you put him, on the field. So he's not necessarily, Tyrann Mathieu, but he has the ability to do a lot of what Tyrann Mathieu can do. But more than likely for a cheaper price point, a little over, $10 million a year for Reid. Mathieu making a lot more than that, given that he is one of the best strong safeties in the NFL, and he gives you that nickel corner versatility. So I think this deal makes a lot of sense for Kansas City. You're gonna have to make those incremental sacrifices. Reid down for Mathieu, I think makes some sense. It is interesting they didn't even try to offer a deal, like try to schmooze him on a big 1-year deal or a big 2-year contract. It's clear that maybe the two sides wanted something very differently. But Justin Reid going to Kansas City, I'll go B+. You're gonna hear a lot of B pluses. I'm pretty optimistic on a lot of these moves. So this is obviously a move that is really interesting because a lot of people are talking about Jordan Davis potentially being the pick at 17 for the LA Chargers. Plus, they've been making moves left and right. You trade for Khalil Mack. You signed J.C. Jackson earlier. We'll talk about that in a moment. But Sebastian Joseph Day gives you some extra, beef there on the interior of the offensive or defensive line, And maybe he's that nose that they're looking for to eat up blocks and allow you to continue to play too high. And if that's the case, does that pivot what you're trying to do at 17? That's kind of where this conversation grows a little more interesting. But 3 years, $24 million, good run stopper, fits the bill, is what you want out of that position. 3-year contract, sure, $8 million a year might be a little steep, but you'll pretty much get through that within the first 2 years. You can think of this as like a 2-year, $16 million or $50 million deal, as you can see on the guaranteed side. There may well be a possibility that they move on from after year 3 or before year 3. So, overall, I think this is a solid move. They get better at a position that they need to get better at, and they continue to add and invest in the defense, which is really intriguing for, obviously Brandon Staley, defensive-minded head coach. What can he do with a whole lot of talent on that side of football? We're going to find out this upcoming year. For Sebastian Joseph Day, give this signing a B. Talk about CJ Uzomah fetching a little bit of a bag. 3-year, $24 million deal goes to the Jets, and I like this deal a lot for both sides. Uzomah is someone who's young, athletic, works well with the ball in his hands, good yak option. So this feels like a player who might fit what, Mike LaFleur wants to do in that offense in New York and gives you a nice check down player. I think a lot of the criticism against Zach Wilson in year 1 was holding the ball too long, looking downfield. Need to be able to play within the offense, get the ball out quick. And Uzomah's a guy who I think will help New York try to move him in that direction, live underneath a little bit more. So I really like this deal. And plus, you look at the tight end crop in this year's draft, like sure you could get a Trey McBride maybe at the top of round 3, Isaiah Likely in the same spot. Maybe you like Greg Dulcich from UCLA. Whoever you like, it's probably going to be very late day 2, day 3 type of investment. And the Jets, just said, forget about that. Let's just go sign a guy who's young, getting better, and really hasn't had a full workload put on his plate. Now he'll have the chance to do that with the Jets. Intrigued by this signing. It could be another one of those New York deals that just kind of quickly falls by the wayside within a year or two. But I also think there's a fair amount of upside to be played here because he is a young and up-and-coming tight end and kind of got to see a little bit more of what he could do last year. You're hoping that developmental curve is still pointing in the right direction. And $8 million a year is not outrageous. It's less than the franchise tag for a tight end, so I don't mind that number at all. I'll go B+. Now, I said I'm going to be overwhelmingly positive. There are going to be a handful of deals, and there's going to be a handful of teams I don't get what they're doing, and that includes Pittsburgh signing a 3-year deal for Mason Cole. We don't know the numbers yet, so this could be a super low-value contract, maybe 3 years, $9 million, or something in that ilk. And, it's like whatever. At that point, he's more than likely starting given Pittsburgh's offensive line situation, but also just could be a guy at that price point you don't mind having on the roster as a swing player, fill-in type of option. So I don't hate him. Mason Cole has never been that good, and he's primarily been a center. So are you moving Kendrick Green, your third rounder from last year, that I think profiles better as a center given his pass blocking limitations and that he is a great run blocker? Put him there in the middle and let him move forward because there are rules in place that protect the center a little bit. So, I think it makes more sense to keep Green there. So if you sign Cole, is he a swing player? Is he just like a backup option? Is he depth? Or is he your new starting center and you're kicking Green over to right guard to replace Try Turner? Before that, replace David DeCastro. I'm not really crazy about this move, but that's not it for Pittsburgh. And here is the other deal that I just don't know why. I guess you could say Chukwuma Okorafor has gotten slightly better year over year, but legitimately last year, I think I would have tried to make the argument that outside of Storm Norton for the Chargers, Chukwuma Okorafor was the next worst starting tackle in the NFL. I was not a fan of what I saw last year, and last year was the most playing time that he's gotten, and I've heard people say that they think he's getting slightly better. At this point, we've seen 4 years of it. How much incremental progress are you going to continue to invest in? And not only invest, keep him on the roster, but pay him $10 million a year. Pretty much that price point. That's just a tough scene. I don't get this deal whatsoever, and I don't really get the Mason Cole one. So I'm going to go D+ here. I don't like, this is a team that had to get better on the offensive line, and it almost feels like what Carolina did last year, where it's like, yeah, they are putting resources into the offensive line, but picking bad players to do it with. And for Okorafor, a person who is already a part of the problem that you just gave money to, thinking that might fix the problem. I don't know. A little bewildering. Like I said, I'll go D+. Next signing, let's talk a little bit about Xavier Woods. I think he's a really nice deep free safety opposite of Jeremy Chin. What is interesting about this is this team felt like after drafting J.C. Horn 8th overall last year, we're going to see a lot more press man. And if that's going to be the case, you're going to probably see a lot more split safety, ideally with Chin and Woods. We'll see. Otherwise, what I see with those two safeties is Chin comes down in the box as your robber role in a cover 3, and Woods is your deep single high guy in that type of scheme. So we'll see. It feels like this team made an investment to go one way defensively last year, and then this signing kind of signals to go the other way. Now, that being said, 8th overall pick definitely weighs more and has more levity behind it than a 3-year contract to, league average, maybe slightly above average safety. So, I don't want to get carried away thinking, the Carolina's going back to, old school cover 1 looks, but it's kind of an interesting move to say the least. But maybe, maybe it's, a split safety combo there with Chin Woods, and then they'll have the rotation and the ability to move the safeties around a little bit. If that's the case, interesting. I think Woods is a solid, capable player. He's in his, mid, maybe backside of 20s now. So certainly a player with, tread left on the tire. So, not the craziest signing by any means, but I'll go C+. And Tim Settle going to Buffalo. This is an interesting move. I was really encouraging the Bills, or hoping the Bills would just re-sign Harrison Phillips. I felt like he was the run-stopping nose tackle that they could use on that team. Tim Settle of the same ilk. Don't mind this deal whatsoever. It's short-term contract as well, so it's not like you're attached to Tim Settle for any long period of time. So for this, I like it. Position to need. Don't know the money, so I can't speak to it fully. But let's go B. Let's go B here. Evan Ingram gets a 1-year prove-it deal, and I like this move a lot. Again, it's a contract to a tight end that's less than the franchise tag, right? So Evan Ingram is making less than Mike Gesicki, and that's kind of my bar for this type of assignment, this type of research, call it. So on a 1-year prove-it deal, I think it makes sense for a team like Jacksonville who has cap space to spend. If this works out, he is well beyond, a $9 million value. That could go up to $10 million with incentives, you see on your screen. But if it doesn't, then it's just a 1-year deal, and he's walking next year. So really, I kind of like this deal a lot, and for the right franchise, right? Like, this wouldn't make sense necessarily if it was a contender that, was strapped on cash, could only, make the right scalpel type of decisions. The Jags can kind of put it wherever they would like, and I think Evan Ingram comes with some upside, so don't hate this whatsoever. Let's go B+. Here's another fun one, and this is probably some effect of the Tom Brady on retirement. So Carlton Davis going back to Tampa Bay, about $15 million a year. I think that's a solid price point for one of the better corners in the league, and a team that drafted him, wants to keep him in-house. I think that makes a ton of sense, and we'll see what this means for, Jamel Dean, Sean Murphy-Bunting next offseason. Probably one of those two is not going to be coming back. But, I think Carlton Davis is probably the best of those three. So I think if you're Tampa Bay, prioritize the best of them. And Carlton Davis was that of that trio. So like this deal a good bit, not overpaying, solid value for the player. Let's go B+. And this was the bigger contract that I was referring to earlier, and I love it for the Chargers. I just love that they're going all in, right? Sign a Sebastian Joseph Day. Trade for a Khalil Mack. Now you're getting J.C. Jackson, Sebastian Joseph Day, and Khalil Mack both help you against the run, but obviously Khalil Mack as an edge rusher opposite of Joey Bosa, and then J.C. Jackson is your headline cornerback one. They're going to get some pass rush in. They're going to be able to take away, Patrick Mahomes' top option and Tyreek Hill. Not the entire game. I'm not saying J.C. Jackson that good, but that's a player that could keep up and limit how much damage Tyreek Hill can do to you. And we'll see what the Raiders end up doing out wide, but Derek Carr is a good quarterback if they decide to hold on to him. What does that mean? Denver just got Russell Wilson, right? So J.C. Jackson is someone you're going to need to try to slow down to Cortland Sutton, to Jerry Jeudy, et cetera, et cetera. So I think this deal makes a ton of sense, not only given where this team is at, the money they can spend, but also the division that they play in. So to me, this is an A-caliber deal. And furthermore, the fact J.C. Jackson is making slightly more than $15 million a year, crazy considering this easily could have been a guy who makes 20 plus. So I think the Chargers even got a good value given the player that they're talking about here. So like I said, this is an A move for me. Cedric Wilson going to Miami. Also, backup quarterback Teddy Bridgewater going to Miami. So we'll talk about Teddy Bridgewater real quick. I think he's kind of the right-handed version of Tua. Makes a ton of sense, but also someone who, if Tua gets hurt in a pinch, you don't feel bad about, having to roll out Teddy B for, 1 to 3 game period or so. And could be a guy who helps mentor and push Tua along a little bit. So I like that signing, a good bet, actually. And then Cedric Wilson, another one that I really dig. What is interesting is, okay, Devontae Parker, Jalen Waddle, Cedric Wilson, you're kind of lacking that size, but I think Wilson can win in a variety of ways. He is quick, twitchy, good athlete, works after the catch, works those underneath things, but maybe there is something more to tap into is, someone who can win further down the field. Obviously has good speed, so not only getting open, but winning at the catch point might be something you might be able to tap into. Kind of already have that with Devontae Parker, but if you could have a, 2A or a second player who can do that, that definitely goes a long way. Mike Gesicki also in that type of category as well. But really, you look at Jalen Waddle and Cedric Wilson as these guys who can live underneath, but also have the downfield speed to do a whole lot more than that. This is maybe not the sexiest wide receiver room. Jalen Waddle, I think, is a superstar in the making, but the other names don't necessarily jump off the page right away, and you say, wow, Miami's got something crazy working there. But all solid players. I think Waddle has that superstar potential, so they're kind of just building a nice room around him, nice compliments, solid players. And this deal for Cedric Wilson, pretty modest, less than $8 million a year. I don't hate that price point whatsoever, given who he is, and buried on the depth chart in Dallas behind a lot of other really good wide receivers. So this could be a spot where Miami just found somebody before they were about to break out and got him at a good price point because of it. So I like this deal a ton. I'll go A-. It's not on the screen as well, but a couple of Ram offensive line signings I want to talk about. Joseph Nobu, 3 years, $40 million. I think that is your Andrew Whitworth, replacement, assuming Whitworth is retiring. Haven't seen that go official yet, but that is perfect because Nobu played so well during Whitworth's absence towards the end of the regular season last year. I think that is, you're rewarding a guy that you groomed and put into a spot where he's now grown into being a starter. Keep him around, and it makes sense for him to be your heir apparent to Andrew Whitworth. Love that signing. Brian Allen, 3 years, $24 million. Might be a little bit more for an interior player of Allen's caliber. He's nothing special, nothing to write home about, but just a league average starter. But I appreciate the Rams spending money on the offensive line and trying to keep that unit afloat. So Noteboom, I think that's a B+. Brian Allen, probably a B-. So even it out and say the offensive line signings, we'll call it a B for LA. Now, I haven't seen any money come out on this deal, but Roger Saffold going to Buffalo, really spicy. And I saw the Bills did cut Darrell Williams, so Saffold might just be plug and play right guard right next to Spencer Brown, who they took in the mid-rounds last year to play right tackle. So don't hate that whatsoever. Saffold definitely gives you an identity as a run blocker. Not great in pass protection, which, thinking about Buffalo, could be a bit of an issue, but I think the supporting cast around him will be able to keep him afloat, and maybe it helps give you a little bit of an extra dynamic and be able to run the ball behind Saffold that you just haven't necessarily had. He was a little bit better last year with Allen using his legs more and got more out of Singletary, but I think Saffold can help you tap into that a little bit more. So, big run play situations, I would anticipate you're going to see the Bills running behind Saffold on the right side. So, don't hate this deal at all. I don't hate the signing and its principle. Don't know the money figures, so kind of talking out the side of my mouth when seeing this. Let's go B here. And one signing that nearly broke the internet yesterday. This deal was a little misconstrued because it's up to $84 million. It appears that it's 4 years, $72 million deal for Christian Kirk, but that is a lot of money for Christian Kirk to go out there and fetch. And For the Jags, yes, they need a wide receiver. Christian Kirk is in his mid-20s. So you think that his best years are still ahead of him, for sure. That is a lot of money to deal out a guy who best production and best season came from working in the slot when you already have Laviska Shenault, and it feels like Shenault was probably a guy you had to keep in the slot versus playing on the outside. And I was a huge Laviska Shenault fan coming out of Colorado, so I am hoping the best for him. Kirk feels like you're putting I don't want to say the same, but a player who wins from the same spot right on top of Shenault. So what does that mean for one another? Does Kirk move back outside and become a vertical field stretcher? Is Shenault moving to the backfield? Can he play some more outside? Is he just going to be all over the place so you don't even think about it with Kirk? I just have a lot of questions, and I think Doug Peterson is a lot more competent and will do a better job than Urban Meyer did last year. But these are the type of signings that make you go, oh, well, this is kind of like last year when the Jags were doing things that I couldn't understand. So now I'm concerned. So some of it is just carryover concern and worry from what the Jags had been in years prior. But yeah, this as one of the first signings of free agency was probably not the best foot forward for Jacksonville. They'd probably rather you have heard about Brandon Sheriff's deal before the Christian Kirk signing. But at least when I was digesting all this yesterday, that is not how it played out. Unfortunate there for Jacksonville. I think Kirk is a good player, but he really only has 1 year where he stands out. He pops. You notice him. And it came from working the slot where I thought Laviska Shenault was going to be living out of. So don't think it's the worst deal in the world. But it does feel like in potentially 2 years we'll be talking about Christian Kirk being on the move because he makes way too much money, and the Jags are looking to use that cap room elsewhere. So I'll go see. Here's another big deal I want to talk about because, in my newer mocks, I've been thinking about Devin Lloyd maybe falling to Green Bay at 28. But Devondre Campbell coming back, $10 million a year, not too bad, especially considering you look at what, Bobby Wagner pre-cut was making, what Fred Warner, Darius Leonard, they're going to be making, what Devondre Campbell did for them, and to sign a 5-year deal. I think that's a money signing there for Green Bay. Fits perfectly in that defense, and they were the place that got the most out of him and made him feel like he was at home, and he looked like he was at home playing that defense. So I think it works for both sides. I'll go with an A right here. So news actually did just break as I'm recording this. So yesterday the Jags signed Foyesé Oluokun from Atlanta, and I didn't get to talk about that here, but I think he's an upcoming solid, rangy, tackle making machine at that linebacker spot, and I figured this would be something that coincided pretty soon after Myles Jack has been released. And as Matt Miller says right down here, Dallas should be all over it. I am in total agreement. Allows you to use that 24th overall pick in this year's draft on offensive line or on pass rusher / corner or safety, depending on who you like in that spot. A lot of places Dallas could go there, and especially if they go ahead and get Myles Jack potentially for cheap after being cut by the Jags, I think that'd be a solid move. But I want to bring this up. Foyesé Oluokun, I'll give that signing, maybe a B-. I think he's a solid player. Probably made a little too much money, but move on for Myles Jack, and it kind of negates out. And getting towards the end of this video, Janoris Jenkins was just released. I think, man coverage heavy team, maybe in New England, looking to replace Janoris Jenkins, J.C. Jackson will be all over Janoris Jenkins as a free agent. Definitely a solid cornerback put on the market. And then one of the final things that doesn't really coincide with anything that's on the screen here, but I did want to talk about the Mitch Trubisky contract with Pittsburgh. Yeah, that was another weird move for the Steelers, and kind of goes back to what I was talking about the offensive line. It just feels like you're trying to fix a problem and you're looking in the right areas, but you're just looking at the exact wrong options there. If you're going to go after a free agent quarterback, I think Marcus Mariota, Jameis Winston both give you a higher floor, but also there's talent to tap into. So as opposed to resurrecting Mitch Trubisky, is it not a better move to resurrect a more stable, higher floor option of Marcus Mariota, Jameis Winston? And you could argue those two might have higher upsides than a Mitch Trubisky as well. I think I would, especially for Mariota, who we haven't seen start in a while. Maybe he's made some big-time steps in the right direction. I just don't get it. We'll see what the money comes in, but, no official grade here, but the Trubisky thing to me is a D. So everything Pittsburgh's done, they're one of the bigger losers of free agency in my eyes. The Jags have done some questionable things. Some of the big winners, the Chargers, have been stellar. And, at this point, there's still a whole lot of news breaking, so I don't want to go too much further than that. But those have been some of my reactions to signings from yesterday and the early goings of day 2 of free agency. I'll try to keep doing this throughout the week. Hopefully, again, you don't mind the less structured way this has been filmed, and hopefully you understand why I'm having to do that. But hopefully you all enjoyed today's video. If you did, hit that like button. It would help me out a ton. If you're new right here, be sure to hit that big red subscribe button. And of course, tell me what you thought about day 1+ of free agency. What's some signings that you really like? Who's your favorite team? What players do you wish they could have added? What players do you think that you should maybe not have added? I'd love to have any sort of football conversation with you down in the comment section. That's going to do it for me, though. Hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day. Till next time, my name is Tej, and I'm signing off.